And believe it or not, now the United States has the best legislation in the world with respect to climate change. But it's very recent. It's barely a year old, not quite, and still needs some improvements. Good morning, good afternoon rather, well, somewhere in between. This is hopefully going to be very short since we're running out of time, I understand. I'm going to say things that are very new in scientific terms as well as in financial terms, which I think are in an unusual situation where the two are merging to find and to determine a stable solution to climate change. I'm very hopeful, although, of course, I'm not sure that is going to happen. But the first point there is to pay attention. I have spent, as a CEO of Global Thermostat, I spent many years working on the latest request and requirement by the National Academy of Sciences in a report on the topic, and by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, 195 nations sending scientists to the United Nations IPCC to determine the scientific realities of what has to happen to end or to reverse at this stage climate change. And despite some of the discussions we had yesterday, the evidence is clear. And unless people contest the National Academy of Sciences on their scientific findings, and the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, then the only way to reverse climate change, which is already happening, is to remove the stock of the legacy CO2, which is already in the atmosphere. We do have several technologies to do that. They were developed, they are not economically as feasible as they should be. So, but they do exist, and they have been recognized, and it is also recognized as the only solution to reverse climate change. That's why the first sentence here says, technology exists, and what we lack is the implementation. But not just implementation, incredibly fast implementation needed. We need to remove about 500 gigaton of CO2 from the atmosphere in the last 10 to 20 years. There is some flexibility there. It's too complicated to explain. But the technology is not the issue anymore. We don't need to talk about technology. We need to talk about how to implement it in a way that is fast enough to make a difference. So this is what I want to talk about. And the breakthrough that I want to talk about is that until now, and we heard some of that yesterday, the investors have been finding it very difficult to invest in opportunities for ESG, which are the environmental and government, etc., opportunities for investment. The reason is, as any person with financial expertise will tell you, is that there are not many financial instruments that are available for ESG opportunities, while at the same time, there is $4 trillion worth of dry powder, which is intentions to invest that cannot be realized from global private investors around the world. So we have this problem here, and the breakthrough that I referred to, and I will explain now, is that together with two laws in which I had the privilege of working to propose and to push forward, together with Senator Whitehouse, Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, and also a Republican Senator, John Barroso from Wyoming, but mostly Whitehouse. Two pieces of legislation that for the first time have made the United States the leader in environmental legislation to resolve climate change in the world. It seems incredible, but we've done it. By we, I mean, I wrote the proposal, but the people that really worked on it in the Congress, mostly in the Senate, were, as I said, Sheldon Whitehouse. And that was, when I wrote the proposal for that, for what became 45Q, was January 2019. And that became 45Q, this unprecedented law, but it's all about tax credits because of the insistence of Barroso, who wanted tax credits. But now, in the last year or two, especially since 2022, we have the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually contains a continuation of 45Q to obtain the entire proposal that I made in 2019, in which case what you get is that the government will offer, will pay for carbon removal. Because, as I said, both the United Nations IPCC and the National Academy of Sciences in the US recognize that that is the single item that is needed without which we cannot resolve the existing climate change. So the question then is that this is a financial solution to the problem. And normally, in this type of meetings like this, we don't offer financial solutions. We think of the financial sector as being against the environment. But here, I'm here to tell you that we need financial solutions, and we need them now, because it's the only way to do learning by doing, drop the costs, expand the production, and bridge the $2 trillion gap to provide the implementation speed without which we're not going to make it through. So in the midst of an ongoing climate disaster in which we are, oil companies are extracting and refining, this is a fact, and they accept it, more oil than ever, while realizing the highest level of profits in history. I don't have anything personal against the oil companies. And as a matter of fact, there are many positive things that can be attributed to them. But in this case, it's a very serious matter that for decades, teams of scientists, the National Academy of Science, among others, has a printed report on this, engineers and thought leaders have been working tirelessly on the technological solutions to reverse climate change. I'm included there. And I have several patents on this, including a patent for carbon removal that is considered to be one of the top technologies, the top 3 in this area, perhaps number 1. The technology is ready. All we lack is the speed for implementation. Now, according to the National Academy of Science and the UN IPCC, as I said before, we must remove in total 500 gigatons of CO2 in about 10 to 20 years. Now, let me say what's a gigaton, so that you understand the scope of what is being contemplated. A gigaton is a number 1 followed by 9 zeros. A million is 1 followed by 6 zeros. So we are really talking about billion tons. The word billion has different meanings in different languages, in Europe than in the US. But a gigaton is number 1 followed by 9 zeros. The mass that we're talking about removing is equivalent to 1.5 billion Boeing 747 jets put together. you read it right, is out of scope. Now, since 2019, the breakthrough US policy I mentioned was a request that Sheldon Whitehouse made to me about writing a proposal about what legislation will work, because he was trying to do something about it. God bless his soul. And he did, actually. And that became 45Q. And then 45Q, as I said, it was just for tax credits. So if you remove a ton of CO2, they give you a certain amount of tax credits from government sources. IRA transformed that into the full proposal I have made in March 2019, which was money. And there is $120 per ton or $180 per ton. It's actually, it operates as an offtake. It's a promise to buy. This reduces and removes CO2 from the atmosphere. And believe it or not, now the United States has the best legislation in the world with respect to climate change. But it's very recent. It's barely a year old, not quite. And still needs some improvements. There are some issues on ocean that should be covered, and I'm still working on that, but it's there. If we manage to get this legislation to pass at the Convention of the Parties, number 28, which is going to occur in Dubai this year, from the 1st to the middle of November, we basically have insurance against the spread of climate change beyond where we are now. And furthermore, that can reverse climate change, because the amount of money is staggering. I did mention $4 trillion. You heard well. The $4 trillion is dry powder, which is intentions of invest by private investors globally. This is not governments. These are private investors. They are saying to their managers, investment managers, they are saying, hey, we want to invest in ESG. We want to invest in removing CO2 from the atmosphere, etc. But there haven't been securities to do that, because the whole process of removing CO2 is new, and because the financial markets have never been the best friend of the environment until now. And now, the financial markets have to become the best friend of the environment if we all want to be here to tell the story. Most funding for climate innovation and technology required to limit global temperatures to 1.5 centigrade above pre-industrial levels by 2030 need to come from the private sector. They need to come from the private sector. The funding gap for climate change mitigation technologies is the difference between DCF's total private funding requirement and the availability for these technologies between 2021 and 2030, which is the forecast period. So far, there hasn't been enough financing. And funding gap analysis estimate there is a $2 trillion private funding gap for next generation climate technologies. But there is a $2 trillion gap, and there is a $4 trillion dry powder. So this is something that can be solved. What is needed? Financial instruments. So we need finance to solve this problem. We need to create innovative financial instruments using the financial expertise, product frameworks, technology, geographical reach to create structures that spread risk, management of risk, to facilitate both climate tech development and deployment. The breakthrough is that we created them. I have been working on this, and the asset-backed offtake-backed securities, remember, mortgage-backed securities are offtake-backed securities. The similar but quite different from mortgage-backed securities are offtake-backed securities, which are also asset-backed securities. And private investors love them. Why? Because as it is accepted, I have 2 minutes, so I have, okay. Shall I just stop here? I mean, the previous, I know. Well, I don't know what to do. I mean, I tend to, as an organizer myself, I tend to agree with you. We have to stay within the limits, but so the financial services companies are in a privileged and powerful position. They may hold the key to unlocking the power of groundbreaking climate technology to effect reversing climate change, and they should use it. They can use it. As I said before, the issue here is in the month of May of this year, 2023, I patented a new type of asset-backed security, where the asset that backs it are not mortgages, as in the mortgage market. The loans are backed by real estate. That's what the mortgage is. I created an asset which is not backed by housing, or it's not mortgage-backed. It is offtake-backed. What is an offtake? An offtake is the promise to buy, which is a financial instrument that is behind every plant or every technology built in this area. It starts from an offtake, from important and high risk-bearing and companies that have the funding to do that, to offer the offtakes. Those offtakes are now going to become the equivalent of the real estate market in offering asset-backed securities, according to my patent. That patent is a US patent, but it can be extended globally, working with, at this stage, 2 large financial companies. In fact, one of the descendants of Ted Roosevelt, the president, also Ted Roosevelt, is in Barclays Bank, and the head of the climate change area. And that institution, Barclays, is leading the charge on offering this type of new type of securities that investors are going to put into work in order to obtain the funding that is needed for this solution. So we have that. Then we have Citibank, which is a very important global institution. And more important, we have the clients that are going to borrow the money. And they are the largest water companies in the world, because as people have already mentioned, the water problem is very serious. But the number is, there is 1 billion, with B as in boy, people that don't have enough drinking water in the world. So together with the water companies, together with these fantastic type of institutions, I'm not implicating them, I'm just giving their names so that you have an idea what type of institution we have to work with, comes, and the patent that was already approved comes the ability to create a monumental financial strategy that can provide the technology that already exists with the speed of implementation that is needed to reverse climate change. I'm going to stop here. And if you have any questions, let me know. I wanted to say, I have brought 2 books here. One of my latest book is the latest book, Reversing Climate Change, I think will be the subject of an announcement, and then Saving Kyoto, which is how I created the carbon market of the Kyoto Protocol. The whole history is here. Okay, thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Neal McDonough, and I work advising Graciela on some of the many projects that she has going at any given time. This is just a very brief announcement that I have to make in regard partially to books. Just last week, Zvi Ruder, the executive senior editor at World Scientific Publishing, contacted Graciela with news of a recent uptick in the sale of the book she just mentioned, Reversing Climate Change. Zvi, as her publisher, has now asked for another book from Graciela, but in addition to that book, is looking for a series of specific topics dealing with climate crisis, global warming, and the profound transformative steps now being taken in technology, social change, and diplomacy at both the national and international levels to resolve these issues. Whereas Graciela would be writing the first book in this series, furthering her formation of 45Q and involvement in the IRA, Zvi has asked Graciela to search out for partners in who might be identified as authors, contributors, and editors of the rest of this series. It is with this, we are looking at the possibility, right now this literally happened Thursday afternoon, at the idea of working with AREDAY, in specific with Chip, who is just an unbelievable expert at finding the highest level of speakers and thought leaders in this field. So with that, we are looking to identify those authors, and any forthcoming information, hopefully you will check back on the website. If anything does come of this, like I said, this is really just in the possibility stage. I hope as many of you as possible can be involved at whatever level. And again, we have some books of Graciela's available. Just meet up with us later today. Thank you very much.